Hello, friends. This is Richard, founder of Short-Term Rental University Podcast, and we're coming to you live from Chicago, the home of MiLo and Chandra Airbnb superhosts. And this is the podcast where we're teaching people to use short-term rentals like Airbnb as a tool to achieve their entrepreneurial success.
Welcome to the STRU Podcast, your number one online hosting community, helping you achieve your goals through short-term rental investing. Now, here's your host, Richard Ferdig.
It's a really cool and inspiring story. We're going to be talking about MiLo and Chandra's expansion, and they're currently renovating a place. Charles and I walked over there. They gave us a tour. We've got some footage of that. It's really cool and exciting. And just by way of introduction, and then we'll hear MiLo in his own words, he was investigating and thinking about doing Airbnb earlier this, I guess it was around March, April, found our YouTube channel, educated himself, started doing it, had much more success than he really thought possible, and that was so encouraging and inspiring that they've expanded quickly. I also really want to thank MiLo and Chandra for being the first people to buy our sheets and towels, and that's that's amazing. Pardon me. But anyway, we just got really excited, and tonight we're doing the meetup here in Chicago. I'm excited to meet more people, and I've had just a great time with MiLo and Chandra, and we're in their place. We're staying here tonight, courtesy of them, which is just so generous and hospitable. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And now, for those of you that don't know you, and he's active, and so is Chandra in the Facebook group, so you'll see him posting and commenting and so on, and we appreciate that. But why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and your background and what brought you to Airbnb?
So I originally was out of college. Actually, I became a full-time actor. Essentially, and that lasted for some time, and then I went into.
Did you do anything big or good? Like, have I seen you anywhere?
Probably not, but I did do a few commercials that
cool.
are not airing anymore. But I mean, I did get a lot of passive income through that, which is
good.
Quite nice. But yeah,
like when they continue to air.
Oh yeah,
that's a beautiful thing.
I did a small couple of things and lasted a couple of years, which was very, very nice.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Pay is really good if you can get it. But yeah, it's I did that for a while, but then I think, of course, my dad, he's an entrepreneur through and through, and he was just basically looking at my life as like, you should probably start getting into the business. And so I joined a restaurant that he helped some other people start. And the owner is, which is our partner, she is a really, really good friend of ours. And so I basically started learning about business essentially from my father and her. And then I just about maybe earlier this summer, mid-June, we started. We first listed and opened our Airbnb. And only maybe a month prior did we actually make the decision to actually go through with it and see where that can go. And now it's basically doing so much more than what we ever imagined it would be, which is super, super amazing. It's kind of like completely changed our life trajectory.
That's amazing.
Very, very much. Yeah.
So we're going to drill down on that a little bit. MiLo and I spoke a little bit about sort of his hopes and aspirations on the unit that we're sitting in right now. And without getting into too many of the specifics, I don't know how comfortable he is with the total transparency, but he had a volume that he thought he would make in terms of revenue. And the first time that they listed it, he made that amount in half the month. And then the next month, it was like 50% more. And then he's had his best month, which was, I think, 3 times that amount.
Yeah.
And all of this, has happened really quickly. To his and Chandra's credit, I think they're, like really embracing it and studying and watching YouTube and reading and doing stuff and just knocking it out of the park. Yeah,
that was exactly the case. I always wanted to learn more about real estate in general, and the only thing I knew about was just regular traditional rentals. And in the place where I'm at, like if I rented that traditionally, it would have made basically like peanuts worth compared to what it is now. And then out of like some strange series of events, we learned more about Airbnb, and that's actually how we found your channel on YouTube during our researching prior to us starting it. And yeah, we started it, and essentially, yeah, we started mid-June, and for 2 weeks, those 2 weeks alone, we've already basically almost made exactly what it would have done for an entire month. And then the next month would be the first full full-blown month that we would have Airbnb, it made way more. It made basically $1,000 more than what we ever imagined the highest it would go. And I was like, wow, that's super amazing. And then yeah, in October, it just was our best month ever, and it just completely blew it out of the park. Just way more than what we ever imagined. And it was like, yeah, super changing.
That's awesome. And what's really cool is, having spent a little bit of time with you this morning and this afternoon, is I think it's encouraged you to view yourself a little bit more as an entrepreneur yourself, right? You said your father was an entrepreneur, but the things that we're talking about and the way that you're thinking about, your future and your life and your combined life, it seems like this has given you confidence and support, and now you're looking to do things that perhaps just 6 months ago you weren't contemplating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I definitely so I've been now in the food industry for quite some time, I think like 7 or 8 years, and all the skills that I've learned from that, and also thankfully from my father, and also going and working in the business, helped to create those skills and my confidence to kind of deal with a lot of different problems, or just anything in pertaining to business, which was extremely helpful. And I think you can get those skills no matter what you do. And then that actually, I was very, very thankful for when it actually came to the Airbnb business. For me, it seemed as though it was just so easy, because I already had those skills that I had to learn from my previous, or from current working at the restaurant and anything like that. And so a lot of times when dealing with problems, or just thinking about anything that may come up with issues with Airbnb, it seemed as though it wasn't that as much as a big deal to tackle those problems and actually kind of get the ball rolling and move forward with as far as planning and starting it, and also operating it.
Yeah, but I also think what you did, based on your own words to me before, is a lot of homework.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for those of you that don't know MiLo and Chandra, they're intense. They're doing their research. They're doing their homework. It's not like he just turned the light bulb on in June, and because of all this background training, he just did really well. He was going on and on about another passion of his, which is frequent flyer miles and how to get them. And he can tell you upside down, inside out, 74 different credit cards and which airlines they link to. And, he's going to Tokyo. 5 tickets? How many tickets?
4 round trip tickets.
4 round trip tickets, business class, for like $370. So here's a guy that is being very humble and modest about sort of the amount of time and energy that he spent doing his homework. But without talking about my contribution to that, but like, you spent a lot of time and energy learning and practicing.
Yeah. So we wanted to start as quickly as possible, because it was already midway through the summer, and we wanted to kind of get as much data as possible before the winter time comes. And of course, we are like, business in general, anywhere you go, it's going to be bad in the winter time. So we wanted to see what it can do, and we basically within a month prior to us starting in mid-June, we kind of like Chandra and I looked at each other like, should we do this? And then we're like, yeah, let's do this. And so we did whatever we needed to do to make it happen. And then we basically just read through all the forums, like the Facebook groups, like searched on Google and YouTube and things of that nature to try to get as much information as possible. And that's actually how we found your videos. And we literally just treated it as our Netflix, and we like binge watched them, waited for each other to watch them. But we learned basically try to get as much information as possible to then start with like immediately running. Like we didn't want to have any sort of like hiccups in the beginning. We wanted to just basically go almost into a jogging speed right off the bat, and to get it going.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah, hit the ground running, and then go into like a full sprint. Well, we ended up going into just an absolute full sprint. Basically, a couple weeks in, we're like, okay, this is actually pretty amazing. Once the numbers
it's working, right? It's working.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so cool. So you hit the ground running. You did a ton of research, and I think you probably did more than you even let on. So you did a ton of research, you hit the ground running, it's working, and at what point did you decide, gee, maybe we should expand and start to look for another place?
Essentially a month in, I already thought, okay, well, this is going really well. We're starting to get really booked. Not only just booked, because our worry, of course, like everyone, is just like occupancy and then the price in which you can charge. And as far as us being in Chicago, like in relation to neighborhoods, like we were afraid that we wouldn't get a chance to charge as much as like downtown,
right,
like those amazing places. And so like, okay, well, try to do our math and see how that works. And right when things going well, and also dynamic pricing helped like tremendously, as far as like we thought that we would only get priced at like 175 average, but that turned out to be a lot more than that. So we made so much more with the dynamic pricing. And just from a month's worth of doing it, I already knew that this was going to be something that was going to be really, really, really good. And also the timing of it too. And through your videos, like everyone was talking about, like this is kind of like how like the economy is going and how business in general is going towards this type of like I guess like micro entrepreneurship, like Uber and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I think this is a good time. You and other people are saying like this is like only just slowly becoming mainstream. So I'm like, okay, this is a good time for it. We're doing surprisingly really, really well. I think we might as well start capitalizing it right away. Yeah.
So what did you do? Did you call a broker? You knocked on doors? Like,
Yeah,
how did you find the next opportunity?
Then we wanted to, we wanted to kind of maximize the capital and our returns. So we originally thought we wanted to kind of go into 3 flats, like multifamily places in Chicago. And typically this is either 2, 3, or 4 flat. And we were looking through those for a couple months. And it just so happened that another condo that was essentially next door to us was up for sale. And we figured, okay, well, logistically, it's very easy because it's already right next to where we currently are. And we know the community too, and it seems, and it's already a very, very economically, it was very, very easy for us. So we decided to do that instead of getting a really, really large building. So that happened, and I just found it online and started the ball rolling for that. And from start to close, that was essentially a month and a half. So it was actually almost like a whirlwind sort of thing that we never expected to actually find something like that, because our original plan was we were going to start and see how the winter season goes, and then by maybe next spring how that goes, maybe we'll go into like looking into another one. But we ended up just like going right away, which was nice.
Well, one of the things that you said earlier to me when we were just talking about it was that given the volume and the revenue that you did during peak months, almost didn't matter what happened in the winter months, because you knew you could weather the storm, and like as long as you have those highs, you can have the lows.
Exactly. So I essentially calculated that Chicago's high season, and which is basically between 6 to 8 months even, because of all the traffic that can come through into our area, and just basically lowballed it, gave a really low occupancy average, a really low revenue average, and just from those numbers alone, from that period of time, it was already making the money. I wouldn't have already thought that it would make if it was traditional rental at all.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, that's already amazing. Then I don't even care about the low season, because anything made during then is just extra on top.
Yeah, and you'll probably do better than you think.
Yeah,
right?
it is actually doing better than we imagined.
I mean, that's generally what I find when I talk to Airbnb folks all over the world, and everyone has the worry, right? Like, well, it's a small place, it's not convenient, it's this, it's that, it's the other. And I'm just like, you know what? There's more demand for that if it's priced right than you think. And yeah, you're going to have periods of vacancy, and you're going to have periods where Airbnb is not putting you at the top or page one, even though you're a super host in this. just think about the long game, right?
Yeah.
The long game is it's working great, right? It's
Yeah,
better
it's-
than
yeah.
any alternative. And now you're in business for yourself, and now you're expanding. And so let's talk about that expansion. How did you figure out how much it would cost to renovate, and how did you pick your contractors, and how long is that taking?
So that's actually been quite easy for us. We found a contractor that happens to be my one of my father's students before. Or was a really good friend of my father's, and he ended up, he's now actually one of the biggest contractors in our neighborhood. So we got a really great deal to completely gut rehab our condo. And originally we were kind of imagining a timeline of maybe hopefully like a month for the actual renovations to be done, but they were like, it's going to be 2 weeks. I'm like, holy moly, that's really super fast. So then we were just like rushing to kind of like get everything. And I like me personally, I love actually like building and doing stuff with hand. So learning how to do these things and like laying down like tile and stuff, this is what I really like to learn. So I wanted to actually learn what to buy and how the process of how to do it, because I know eventually if this is what we're going to do, like this is not going to be the end, and then
Right.
we're going to probably do this many more times. And so I made lots of trips to Home Depot and some other places, and kind of learning like what you need and what it takes to get these things done. And yeah, it's been pretty a learning experience, definitely, for sure.
Well, that's great. And then what about, how did you figure out the design element? Because I think there's a variety of things that will stop people from taking that chance on Airbnb, right? First and foremost, like you said, is what about occupancy rate and what about price? So we had those addressed. But then there's people that say, I'm scared of renovations. It sounds like you personally like to do that. Then the next thing that stops people out is like design. Like, I don't know what's a good tile or a bad tile. How did you come up with that sort of design and layout?
I thought I think the general gist of what we wanted to do was actually very, very easy, but the details became a little bit more challenging. As far as design, I just talked it over with Chandra, and we were basically just there's like a plethora of, like, you go on Pinterest and you look at cool kitchen designs or cool interior designs, and you can get a ton of like ideas. And especially I think we both really, really like that modern industrial look that you can get like here in Chicago. It's like the Fulton Market. In New York, it's
Right.
the Chelsea area.
Right.
That kind of look that is timeless, that loft sort of feel to it. And we liked, so from that, then we knew that, okay, that involves like sometimes like subway tiles and like a little bit of wood and the colors. And we just basically saw on like IKEA or Pinterest or just photos, just elements like, we like this part, we like this in general part, like this picture is this in general thing. So we're going to put this with that in there and then see what we need specifically, the supply to what we need specifically to get in order to make that happen.
And for anybody listening or watching, another great resource is Houzz, Houzz. And it's a really cool business model. Like, you can actually click on, say, like the side lamp, and it'll tell you who makes it, and you can actually even click on it and buy it.
Yes.
So it may not be the best prices, but it's a great resource. A lot of designers are there and architects, and it's just really, really beautiful stuff. So from an inspiration perspective, it's a great place to do some homework.
We use that a bit. The pricing
It's
on houses
higher.
are a little bit higher, but I
Yeah.
think what was actually really nice too is that a lot of times you see a photo and it's like, where do I get that? Or like, what do they use? And for them, it's that's the thing I like is like, okay, you could click that and they have a list of all the things that's in the photo.
Yeah, so that's really helpful. And so then I guess the question is, what are you going to do next?
One of the things that we wanted to do next is we wanted to we figured out that in our city market there was an extreme lack of a specific niche, especially in our area, which is large groups. And I wanted to capture that because a lot of times I'm on Airbnb all the time, looking at all the listings that are around me and seeing how they're doing, and also seeing what good listings are doing in the city, as well as internationally, like trying to learn what people are doing, try to put that in. But then I realized like, okay, I think one time I was actually showing my parents, we were planning for our trip, and then I was just showing my parents like, hey, like, what are some really great places for 10 people? Because when we usually travel with our family, we have 10 people total. And so I was like, okay, well, what's a place that we could stay in Chicago if we wouldn't live here that can fit 10 people? And we were looking at these like wonderful places and like looking at the cost of it. I'm like, wow, that's pretty expensive, but actually really economical as far as comparing it to a hotel.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like looking, it's like, okay, well, this is actually really interesting because this guy is fully booked and he is charging a really nice price per day, even on a weekday. And I basically calculated a month that he made. This guy probably made in his one property 40 to 50 grand in revenue.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is really, that's amazing, really, just for one property. And like, if even I get half that amount, it's already super good. So I'm like, and then I was looking, okay, well, where are all these properties in relation to where people want to be, and also the convention center? And I was like, well, there's actually no one that's doing that in the area where I'm living, and it's so convenient for these types of groups. I'm like, well, I want to at least capture that, and I don't like really have any competition. So even if I get half that amount, it's going to be super good. And then I think our plan was that we wanted to actually take a little page from your book. You said that you really like to travel to different places, but you want to actually get properties in the places you travel too. And that's what we kind of want to do as well. So we were like, okay, well, if we manage to have that done, then we can have a really awesome revenue stream to have a springboard to kind of do anything anywhere we want to go to. And then plus we're kind of doing like buying new properties, like complete gut rehab. So we're trying to get that experience, and then getting that experience translates to anywhere else for the most part. And so hopefully we getting out that knowledge to do
well,
that.
look, I can tell you this, and we've talked a little bit about this on the YouTube channel. The experience that you're getting now, I don't even think you have an inkling of how relevant it's going to be and how transformative it's going to be for your life, right? Like you're now taking risks and you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're starting to think bigger, and you started with one and then you started with two, and now you're talking about the neighboring place across the hall from the new one might come up for sale in the next 6 months or so, and you might buy that one. And you keep doing these little like decisions and being bold and entrepreneurial and taking some risk, and you do that for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, like your life is changing. You may not realize it. You may just be looking at, the monthly bank statement and saying this is really working, and that's awesome, and that's what's keeping you going. But what I'm saying, and I know from experience, right? Like I'm sitting here in Chicago right now. I've owned real estate for 20 some odd years. I've had a ton of different careers, and I've done really well in everything that I do. But if I had to pinpoint what it is that has made me successful, is the desire to always try and find the next best thing, the next opportunity, the next trade. And by the way, sometimes I bump my head and I make a mistake and I take one step back and then I take 2 steps forward. That's the whole point of like being an entrepreneur. It's not prescribed. It's not linear. But once you get into that mind frame, which is so empowering, which is I can do this, right? And even if I make a mistake, I learned an awful lot. I won't make that same mistake again. And so I think it's really courageous what you and Chandra are doing. I applaud you. I think it's amazing. I find it very, very personally satisfying and fulfilling that I've helped in any minor capacity to encourage you guys. And so I just think it's fantastic.
No, thank you. Because I think what was actually kind of fun, we were talking about this. It's like, hey, Richard's staying at our Airbnb. It's like because you played a very integral part of our learning experience, and basically from that, it's us starting and being able to become successful. And I think what was really great about the community, and actually in business in general, is like the interaction with people, and that was really rewarding and satisfying to kind of like get a chance to talk to you, talk to other people, even our guests. Like I think that's really great, because then just that whole community is really it makes it really even more enjoyable than just like making money. But it's like the connections. Like we just have a guest who offered us to stay at his place in Melbourne. And we've always wanted to go to Australia. It's like, hey, now we have a place in Melbourne. I think Charles was talking about like, it's like now it's like I feel as though like we were talking about like now that we have hosted, that we have like houses like everywhere in the world that people have invited us to kind of like, hey,
it's so
like
cool,
when you guys
isn't it?
come to stay with us, yeah, something like that.
It's super cool. And I think that MiLo was kind enough to pick me up at the airport with Charles. And I said, look, I've got a couple of deals in the air, and it just becomes part of your lifestyle, right? So like as much as I wanted to land and go hang out and have a meal with you, I was like, I have to go to a place where I can print a contract. I just today executed a contract for sale of a home in the Hamptons, and tomorrow I'm closing on 2 properties in Jackson Hole. And so I was like, MiLo, you've got to, I got to go someplace. I've got to be able to print. Then I need to go to a notary. Then I need to go to Federal Express. And so like the rest of the world, I worked for, I don't know, an hour, right? And now we're doing content and we're going to go do the meetup, and it's work too. But the point is once you have multiple income streams, whether it's from real estate or trading or Bitcoin or whatever it is, the rest of the world doesn't think you're actually working. And what it is your assets are working for you. Instead of you working for assets, I put my assets to work for me, right? And you're starting to do that, and I think it's just going to be incredible for you.
No, yeah, it's I almost can't even tell you how life-changing it was, because we were seriously thinking, it was like, well, what we originally wanted to do was want to start another like restaurant, and I mean it was okay. That was like the only thing I knew like that we were gonna do at the moment, and I was like, oh man, like I mean, I think anyone realizes like the restaurant world is life sucking. Like it'll take up all your time.
It's a grind.
Yeah, it's quite a grind. And then with this, it was like, then I'm thinking like, well, the efficiency of your time and efficiency of doing business, and this is just really, really super efficient. And then I grew up with my dad always telling me like, make sure you focus on your lifestyle. And what's really great about what you're saying is that like this allows you to like create a life that you like. Everyone, when you're working, it's really not really much like working. It's actually you're playing and you're working at the same time. It's not
if
like
you enjoy it, that's what it is, right? Like
exactly.
You enjoy going to Home Depot and getting the tile and talking to your contractor.
Most of the time.
Yeah, no, I mean there's time obviously.
Yeah.
But you know what was interesting? We were in Houston last night at the meetup, and the host of the Airbnb that we stayed at, we were talking. I'd never met her before, invited her to the meetup, and she showed up, and it was really cool. But she said something to me which, like I've felt more recently, but I haven't heard anybody verbalize it. And she's much younger than I am. And she said, listen, for me, there is no way that I'm going to get in a car and sit in traffic and go drive to like work and sit at somebody else's work and do work that's not meaningful to me. She's like, I will be sanding my own furniture and moving the furniture and building my house and my Airbnb business, and I may not make as much money or whatever, but it's like I'm doing something that I enjoy, something for me, and I'm building my future. And like I'm not going to just sit at a desk and take 2 weeks vacation to live my life 2 weeks a year. I'm going to live my life every week of the year.
Yeah.
And if you don't like, sanding and cleaning the windows, then maybe this isn't for you. But she's like, but I don't mind that at all. And I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that was just sort of like, wow, right? Like that statement when somebody says that to you was really powerful. And I thought there's so many people that are like that. Yet what we're all trained, all of us, is go to school, study hard, get a good job, pay attention, and keep getting promoted and rise through the corporate ladder, and then go ahead and take those 2 weeks vacation.
Yeah.
And what I passionately believe is we can all do this ourselves, right? Like it's great if you love your job and you get a nice salary. I'm not telling anybody to quit their work or to not do that. But there is an alternative, and it just doesn't get as much attention. That's all.
Yeah, I like as like sometimes I always try to now tell people, it's like, well, like, hey, like I'm doing short-term rentals on Airbnb, and some like now people know a little bit more about what you're talking about. But like I had some friends in real estate and other people, and I was like, I always like I was trying to like, hey, you always wanted to do real estate. Like this is a really, really great way now to get in and to much more accessible, but also create the revenue that you really want from it. And everyone's eyes always open up at the end of talking
So
about
let's
it.
drill down on those two things. The first thing is that it's much more accessible, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, right? Like there's almost no barrier to entry. Even if you don't have, even if you just rent a place, you can have a fold-out couch like Charles does, or if you have a spare bedroom, you can do that. Or when you travel to somebody's wedding, you can list your property on Airbnb. So like almost anybody that has a roof over their head can become a real estate entrepreneur. Very small, but it's accessible. And before that, it wasn't really accessible. So it's like the democratization of becoming a real estate entrepreneur, and that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I would say is, even though a lot of people have heard about it, I don't think anybody believes how wildly profitable it will be. Right? Like everyone's expectations like, oh yeah, I don't know that I'd bring a stranger into my house for $50 or $100. But once you start doing it, just like you experienced, it's like, wow, I'm making 3 times more than if this was a long-term rental. And then like for the right people, the light bulb goes off and they're just like, I want to do this more.
Yeah. Like I was I always wanted to kind of go through with like with my dad and my parents, like kind of like making sure that my business, what I'm doing is correct, because yes, they have so much knowledge and being entrepreneurs themselves. And I was like joking around with them, being like, hey, it's like it seems as though this Airbnb, like when we first started, like it could be more than both our salaries combined with just this one property that we kind of like in the beginning, it was like kind of like, oh man, like I wish we were in like downtown or something like those places. But then when things started hitting, it's like this place is making them both our salaries combined, and for that 1 month, yeah. So and so that was like completely eye-opening. And
look, I think that's a really good point for a lot of people that are listening and either getting started or looking to expand. I would say the most profitable property that I own in terms of like return on investment, so percentage return on investment, is also the least expensive property that I own, and it's the best investment. I was just down, it's down in Fairhope, Alabama. I went down there for a weekend. I had a great time, and when I was reviewing the numbers, I was like, I should buy another one of these. And so I called my broker and said, show me one, and wouldn't you know it, the price has almost doubled from when I bought it not 3 years ago. So it's no longer as great a return on investment, but it's still a solid return on investment. And that's one of the beautiful things about owning real estate. For those of us that are doing the Airbnb play and actually buying the properties and owning the equity, is the unknown price appreciation. And historically, real estate increases in value. And when I buy real estate, I try and buy real estate in places that I think will appreciate. So I take a look at the demographics, I take a look at the earnings, I take a look at the scarcity. These are all things that you can quantify and make a judgment, a bet, if you will. I could be wrong. I've lost money on real estate very infrequently. More often than not, I make money, and in many cases, significant sums of money. And then we actually do 1031s and tax advantage, tax deferred strategies so that the entire gain is protected and reinvested. And so like it's a very beautiful thing, but you have to get started.
Yes.
And so to that point, I just really want to commend you and Chandra for being bold, and that reminds me, being bold and aggressive. Look what they have here in their property. Here's a rhino, and on the other end of the shelf is another one of our favorite animals from the logo, the elephant. So wisdom and aggressor, and I love it. So I think that's all I have. Do you have anything that you want to ask me? I've been asking you a lot of questions, and you don't have to, but if there's anything you'd like to ask me, now's the time.
I think one of the things that I knew, like, I guess for starting a business is as far as just it is made like originally was just the like business identity. Then I think going a little bit more deeper into like how do you create your company, as far as like the great benefits of real estate is the tax benefits, which is super, super great. And I know like once you get into it, like that's actually really like the super, super awesome part of real estate is being able to not really save up all your money, and you don't have to pay taxes on a lot of things because of what the benefits come with owning land. And I guess I guess it's probably a much more complicated question than the time is basically, and hopefully maybe you talk more about it in the future. Is like as far as like business identity and also 1031. I was like researching of that, but kind of getting into maybe your personal strategy on how that works into your buying properties, and maybe sometimes definitely different states have different benefits, and some states are much better, most states are not as good, and other things like that, as far as taking advantage of the tax benefits.
Well, it's great that you're thinking about it now, because so many people just overlook it, or they only start to research it like when it's time to. And that's the thing about education and learning, is you want to be as knowledgeable about as many things that might apply well in advance, so that when it's time to really drill down, you have that foundation. And I, the way that I look at the tax benefits of real estate is that Uncle Sam is my business partner, right? Like literally, I embrace all of the tax knowledge and the tax advantages of real estate, and that's a competitive advantage. And I've made decisions both to purchase and not to purchase with tax as one of the primary components. I don't necessarily let it be the only component, but I always consider it in every decision that I make. And we're going to start doing more of those videos and more of that education, especially in the master's part of the membership, for people that are starting to think about growing and selling. And the main thing that I want to talk about in response to that question is that's one of the most beautiful things about real estate, is that you can actually control your outcome and your destiny. In other words, you can buy something to do long-term and then go short-term with it. You could buy something to do short-term and then go long-term with it. You can sell it. You can flip it. You can renovate it. If the neighbor comes knocking and wants to sell it to you, you can go ahead and sell it at a great premium and 1031 it into something else. You can go single family. We were talking about multifamily. You could sell a whole portfolio of single families that you've cobbled together over a decade and then buy one big multifamily. Or what I'm doing now as I start to exit some of these bigger positions that I have is thinking about doing triple net leases into big box, rent something to a Home Depot or a Starbucks, and it's triple net lease, so they deal with the taxes and the roof and the repairs, and I'm literally about as passive as you can get. And that's exciting for me as I spend more time traveling and meeting people like you. And I'm developing a project in Bali, and I want to spend time there. And I'm moving to Jackson Hole, and I want to be skiing. And so I want my assets to be working for me as much as possible. And my days of like working for the assets are slowing. And I want to encourage more people to do that. And the fact that you're thinking about it is a great start.
Thank you.
Cool. Charles, anything else?
So that does it for another episode of the STRU Podcast. As always, all links mentioned are in the show notes below. And if you found this show helpful, please leave a review on iTunes. If you're serious about short-term rental investing, be sure to check out str.university. Till next time.